This is just a PSA that if you haven't tried the limoncello LaCroix yet, you are simply not living yet. And that is all. Limoncello LaCroix is the only LaCroix that deserves rights. No, I will not be taking questions. Welcome. Hello. Hello my friends, welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you are new here. My name is Noelle, this is Noelle 7 Pages, and the 7 is almost how many books I read in the month of May, but not quite. This is Sunday in the back. She's in a very smiley, happy mood today, so enjoy that. First of all, can we just give a round of applause to myself for literally filming my wrap-up on June 2nd. Who's gonna tell her that we didn't edit it for like another 4 weeks? You know what they say about good intentions. Anyways, okay, bye. Like, I have everything wrapped up, I have my thoughts together, and I'm ready to go 2 days after the month ends. So yes, I read 6 books in May, which is like not a metric I really worry about too much. I really am loving keeping track of the page numbers, the number of pages that I read, and also the average rating from the month. So of those 6 books, that added up to about 2,800 pages, which for reference is almost my like worst or least I guess frequent, least quantity reading month so far, which I'm not worried about whatsoever. I really had a great month. I just did not read as many pages. I read 5,700 in April and 4,600 in March and 2,800 in May, and that is great. That is fine by me. My average rating in May was a 3.66, which is actually the lowest an average rating has been for me all year so far. The last couple months have both been 3.8s, and before that, February was a 4.3, January was a 4.2. So I guess because I read so few in big quotation marks that it's easy to pull the average down because that's how math works, but I really didn't feel like it was like a bad reading month. I don't know, whatever. So 4 of the books I like physically own, but I did a mostly audiobook and ebook reading month. I think only one of these that I physically own, I actually physically read, which was the graphic novel. However, since I did technically take 4 books off of my physical TBR, whether I read them this way or not, that means that I get 4 positive credits in my balance in an out tracker. I know that sounded confusing, but every month, similar to the way that Emma from Drinking by My Shelf does balancing the books as her whole wrap up every month, I track the physical books that I take off of my TBR cart against the books that I bring into my home or haul during the month, and I actually hauled exactly 4, even though I think most of them were thrifted, which I have right here. So here's a baby haul. So these 4 books came into my house and landed on my TBR cart in May, and these 4 books were taken off my TBR cart in May. I think that makes sense. So usually, if there's a discrepancy, which usually means more books come in than out, I unhaul books to make up the difference, but since it zeroes out and everything is dandy, I will just quickly tell you the books that I actually hauled, because usually this part of the video is an unhaul, so what a treat. The first one is H is for Hawk by Helen Macdonald. This is a nonfiction nature memoir, I think mostly about grief, but I have heard Olive from A Book Olive rave and rave and rave about this. I can't believe I haven't read this yet, but I saw this used and snatched it right up. Can't wait. Actually, all of these are nonfiction, so look at me go. The next one I have is The Content of Our Character, A New Vision of Race in America by Shelby Steele. I believe this was published in 1990. These are a bunch of essays that he's written about being Black in America and what like race means, which is obviously still very prevalent. And I literally found this for $1. So it was not a question whether it was coming home with me or not. The next one is Joan Didion's The Year of Magical Thinking, which won the National Book Award. sometime, not sure when. This was also used, I think this was $5, $6, okay? Will be my first official Joan Didion, so I'm very excited to sink into this memoir. I think it's more memoir than essays, not entirely sure. We'll find out when we get there. And then finally, this is the one that I did not get used. This is Entangled Life by Merlin Sheldrake. This was sent to me by Page One Books, which is the only like book subscription that I have, and I am obsessed with them. I love them so much. They just take a look at your Goodreads accounts, the books that you like, the books that you don't like. You can also tell them exactly what kinds of books you like, what kinds of books you want to explore more or get more into, etc., etc. They have sent me some bangers, and I have seen this floating around Bookstagram for a while, and I don't think I ever would have picked it up for myself. So I'm so excited that they made that decision for me. This is How Fungi Make Our Worlds, Change Our Minds, and Shape Our Futures. And I love woo-woo nature nonfiction, and I think that's exactly what this will be. So really can't wait to sink into this one. This feels like fall to me. Maybe it's just like the mushrooms. I don't know. This feels like a very fall cover. Catch me reading this in like October probably. Okay. So that is my haul for May. Don't have to do an unhaul because I'm just the best like that. The next part of this, before we talk about the actual books, if you're new to my channel, I do a whole bunch of like stats and stuff before I actually talk about the books in my wrap-ups, which means my wrap-ups are usually pretty chonky, but welcome to the show. So I also do my favorites and my least favorites. I talk about my favorite, my least favorite books of the month, and my favorite and least favorite videos that I put up on my channel during that month for like my own personal satisfaction and enjoyment, not like analytics or whatever. My best and worst books, which I will talk more in the video when we get there, but my favorite is The Rose Code by Kate Quinn. This was a 5-star read, my only 5-star read in May actually, and holy shit, I think this will be, like, I'm confident in saying right now that this will be in like my top 5 probably of the year, because wow. But oh my god, I loved it so much, and I can't wait to read more of her backlist. Like she just went to the top of my list of like authors that I want to read through their backlist, so yay for that. My least favorite of the month was A Burning, right here, by Megha Majumdar. We'll talk about that more later, but that was my lowest rated book of the month. And then for my videos, my brain just emptied completely. Favorite, least favorite videos, god. I think my favorite video in May, which may be funny, but my favorite was my May TBR, because I was attempting 5 readathons. I had so much fun, like the way that I organized that TBR, and kind of like got to talk about each of the prompts for each of the readathons and all of my different plans. Even if I didn't 100% make all of that happen, I had so much fun putting that together, and I felt like it was a video that I am really proud of. I really like the thumbnail for that one too, so I think that was my favorite. A short second would probably be my duology vlog from last month. And my least favorite video was the poetry vlog that I just recently posted. I don't know, and this is one, usually the analytics are very different from like how I personally feel about them. I'm proud of the poetry vlog, I just feel like it's nothing to write home about. I don't know, maybe that's weird for me to say on my channel about my own videos that I like actively posted. Like, I think it's worth the watch. Like, I always watch my own videos, and like, because if I don't enjoy them, like I would never put them on the internet for anyone else to watch. It was like okay, like I liked it, it's just far from my favorite, so hence my least favorite of the month, I guess. Okay, that felt weirdly vulnerable, but anyways, okay, moving on. It's currently 81 degrees inside my house, so I'm gonna finish this quick so that I can not be in a black t-shirt. Okay, let me find my wrap-up page. Let's get to the books. Let's get to the books. The first one that I have to talk about is Beach Read by Emily Henry. This I thought was gonna be kind of a fluffy romance, but there's like a whole lot of actual good substance to this. I really loved this book. It was the exact romance that I needed, and if you have romances with similar vibes, not vibes like atmosphere, but vibes like like depth and complexity with the characters on top of the romance, like I want those recs. Like those are the romances that I want, so let me know. This is about two novelists who were kind of rivals in college because they write very different things. Our one character, January, is a romance author or women's fiction author, and the other character is like a literary fiction slash thriller author, I think. But then they both end up at a lake slash beach right next to each other. They both find out they're dealing with writer's block, and so they decide, well, I'll teach you how to write in my genre, and we'll go on research trips, and maybe that will help each of us like crack something in our own writing. And it was so much fun because, like I said, there is actually a lot of other stuff going on in these characters' lives, and to me, that was the best part of the story. I gave this a 4 stars because I just wanted more of that oomph. Like this easily could have been another 50, 100 pages long, but I get why it's not, because it's romance called beach read, and I think that would have just, you know, gotten too long. But I would have loved a little bit more time to really sink in, get to know those characters a little bit better, a little bit more backstory, a little bit more emotions in there. But as far as like the romance goes, I loved it. I think the chemistry was fantastic. I loved the characters themselves. I felt like they both really grew and learned a lot, considering it was like one summer that this takes place during. What was the other thing I wanted to say about this? Oh, so I actually read this on audiobook, and at the end of the audiobook there's this like podcast episode with the author, and she says that when people ask her what the book is about, she tells them like what I just told you. It's about two people who write opposite genres and then they trade genres, blah, blah, blah. But when other writers ask her what the book is about, she tells them that it's about writer's block and being creatively blocked, and how to deal with that mentally and emotionally, and how to come to terms with, you know, the thing that you love to do is your job now, or how to unblock yourself or explain yourself to the people in your life, and all of that stuff, which like that got me at the end of the book. The book is done when the author is telling me, hey, this book is literally about writer's block, because if you didn't know, I'm a writer. It's both my passion and like to write fiction, but also it's my day job. Like I'm a freelance writer. That's what I do to pay my bills. And so my entire livelihood depends on me writing and being able to just be creative at the drop of a hat on demand. So that really got me. And so now I've been reflecting on this book ever since about like having more of that message, and I really loved that. So overall, I think this will be one that I'd be happy to reread for sure. 1, to experience the characters again, and 2, to take more of that message to heart, like while I'm reading it, rather than just kind of picking that up right at the end. The next one I read is an arc that actually came out like a couple months ago, so you can go buy this and read this if it sounds good to you, but it's called The Memory Collectors by Kim Neville, and this was a 4-star read for me. I actually very, very thoroughly enjoyed this, but it was very, very quiet and very mysterious and very contemplative. Like there's not a lot of plot going on. This is like the definition of a character-driven kind of like quiet story unfolding. I know I just said quiet multiple times, but that's how it felt. It just felt like, I almost felt like I was supposed to be in like a blanket under the covers reading it, because it just had this really certain atmosphere that I can't quite put my finger on, that just made it so addicting and just like pulling me in. It's very, very rich because all of the details are based on emotions. So let me back up a second and explain like the gimmick to this book. I read this book during Pepathon, which I was attempting to read as many arcs as possible. I actually read both of the 2 arcs that were on my TBR for that, so good job me. And this one I put in the prompt for a trope that you dislike, and the trope that I dislike is books having a gimmick just for the sake of having like a cool gimmick, but not really doing much with it. And because that's what I was worried that this might be, but it was not at all. It was not at all. I thought that this book really did it justice. And what I'm talking about is this book is about these two women who have this mysterious ability to sense the emotions, like when they touch an object. It could be anything, a piece of clothing, furniture, little trinkets, jewelry, whatever. When they touch something, they can like physically sense the emotions that were impressed on that object by someone else. And so one character calls them stains because of her past, and another character calls them like brightness or bright objects. And so some objects are like stained with happiness and love and excitement or peace or things like that. And some items are stained with anger, rage, jealousy, envy, like more negative kind of emotions. These two women kind of find each other somehow, and one of them is much older and she wants to use her like life's collection of bright objects to kind of curate them into a museum where people can go, and even if they don't have the ability to sense the emotions in the object, you still would subconsciously know, wow, I'm in this room and I feel so happy and joyful and at peace. And that's because that room would be curated with happy, joyful, peaceful objects, like with those energies. So I don't know if this makes sense, but the book is very, like, makes it make total sense, I promise. And so this other young woman usually is like dumpster diving and collecting objects where she then sells them at the night market to people who are just drawn to those certain emotions in those objects. They find each other, they start making this museum. We get to know about a lot of the family history and backstory, the way the characters are. There's a lot about family trauma in this book. There's a lot about coming to terms with the past, coming to terms with being different. I really, really loved it. I don't know how to really classify this because it's not magical realism per se, but it's also not speculative. It's one of those kind of like genre benders. Like, I would say I'd recommend this to fans of magical realism, historical fiction, kind of like slow contemporary. It definitely was not fast paced, but it was easy to get through. Like, I read this very quickly, even though it was like slow and quiet, if that makes sense. So that was The Memory Collectors, loved it. I don't think I've written my actual review for it yet, but I'll do that soon because gotta get that NetGalley score up. Okay, and then next one that I read was Crooked Kingdom by Leigh Bardugo. This, I'm so happy to say that I read this because basically my entire May TBR was me saying, under no circumstances will I not read Crooked Kingdom. And I did it. And like, listen, I feel so mediocre about this book. I can't really even tell you much that happened. And I read this just like 2 weeks ago. I gave this a 3-star. I think it was a good ending to the duology, but I did not care whatsoever about the plot of this book. I felt like the plot of this book could have just been a novella. Like, did not need to be like, whatever this is, 500 or 600 pages. But the characters of this book is what really, really, really carry the story. And so that is, the characters are responsible for like all 3 of those stars. The plot of this book I literally could not have cared less about. But the characters, the character work, I'm so invested in all of the characters in this cast and the way that they all grow and develop and deal with things in this book. I loved it. But the plot was so forgettable. I don't know if I want to read the last series in the universe, which is what, like, Rule of Wolves or whatever that series is. Let me know if you think that I should get there, because I DNF'd the Shadow and Bone series years and years ago. I read Six of Crows, thought it was okay. I read this and thought it was like really lukewarm. So I don't know if I'll continue, but I am glad to have read them just so I can like understand and like not have the FOMO. But overall, like, it was like fine. Okay, and then now we get to my favorite of the month / year so far, maybe? I'm sweating. Okay, this is The Rose Code by Kate Quinn, and I just finished this like 2 days ago, so it's very, very fresh. but I love it so much, and I'm so obsessed. I'm so obsessed. This is a World War II historical fiction based in England and follows 3 different women code breakers that worked at this very secret intelligence base during the war, and so no one knows that they're like working for war intelligence. They just think that they're normal civilians. When people ask about their jobs, they just say, oh, it's so boring, just clerical work, like nothing that's interesting to talk about. But really, they're intercepting encrypted German military messages and like decoding them and breaking them. They're like basically spies, but they're not like out in the field. They're like in this complex, like cracking codes and translating them to then disperse to their own forces. And like this actually happened. It's also told in 2 timelines. One timeline is like during the war while they're at this complex doing this work, and the other timeline is a couple years after the war ends, and one of the women is locked up in an asylum, and you slowly are starting to figure out about why she's there, what's going on, what happened at the end of the war, you know, that landed her there. And so it's very thrilling, even though it's like 650 pages long. So it's not one to binge, but it's like so good. It is worth every page. It is worth every page of the 650. Unlike this, where this could have been half the length, Rose Code was the perfect length, I thought, because there's so much depth and complexity and research. Like, I really felt like I spent all of those pages in the 1940s with them, because it's told in, I think it's told in 3rd person the whole time, but you jump around through the 3 POVs of each of the 3 women, and they're all super different. They all have very distinct personalities. They all go through so much. There is so much growth that they all deal with, and it's just, I cried. I sobbed so hard. For part of this, I was reading it in an airport, and I was like fully bawling, like through my mask, reading this on my Kindle in the airport. And I didn't even care if people were looking at me, because it was just simply that good. This, if you have been here for a while, you will remember the wrap up that I did where I ranted about Lovely War, which I hated. And I stand by that. And I know that Lovely War is about World War I, or during World War I, and Rose Code is World War II. But like, all of the problems that I had with Lovely War are resolved and done perfectly in the Rose Code, in my opinion. A lot of which is not having the depth to the characters, feeling like the characters could not have possibly been real, and having the author pulling punches and romanticizing war rather than actually writing a historical fiction that gives you the impact and like some of the emotions of what that might have been like during that time. The Rose Code, I felt like I deeply knew and connected with the characters, and I loved them. I was rooting for them. I felt like I understood them, and let me tell you that we did not pull any punches in the Rose Code, and hence I was definitely sobbing, like sobbing, but in like a good way, not a good way, but like it was earned. Like, I don't feel like anything was gratuitous. I could go on and on and on about this forever, but like, just know that it's a long one, but it's good. And this is coming from someone who is pretty new to historical fiction, but oh my God, like, I loved it. I can't wait to get my hands on something similar, because I'm like hungry for it now. I get it. I get why World War II historical fiction is just so oversaturated, but read this one. If you're gonna read any World War II historical fiction, please let it be this one. Okay, next. Oh, that also just came out. That was an ARC. I don't know if I mentioned that. That just came out in March, I think. So brand new release. I bet you it's one that people are gonna be talking about. So If you want to be in the know, that's my advice. And then the next one that I have is On a Sunbeam by Tilly Walden. This is a very chunky, lengthy graphic novel, but I think in total, it probably took me like maybe 2.5 hours to read all 500 pages, because it's one of those graphic novels that like has a lot of pictures and not as many words. Very beautiful art, by the way. This was so cool and would be such a good one to read like for Pride Month too, because it's a 100% queer cast, including a non-binary character and a sapphic romance, multiple sapphic romances actually, and relationships. Loved it, loved the entire cast and the relationships and the character growth that go on that are somehow depicted in just, I was gonna say just 500 pages, but I mean 500 graphic novel pages. This takes place in a kind of sci-fi setting, but not a lot is explained to you. I was just talking to Nidhi from Nidhi Ready Reads about this recently, where it could easily be very confusing if you were used to sci-fi explaining every little thing about the world, but almost nothing is explained as far as like world building goes, and that didn't bother me because it almost read like magical realism. Like if you're familiar with magical realism, where like it's just the abilities or the world is just simply how things are and it's never really explained explicitly to you as the reader, that was like those were the vibes of this world as well, even though it was in space and on spaceships, so it had more of a sci-fi feel. It was, you were still in the dark about like a lot of stuff going on, but I thought it still worked out perfectly. I gave this a 4-star. The end felt a little bit rushed to me, like it was a pretty slow and steady pace for the whole book. Like the mystery is there, the characters are developing, we're getting a lot of history. There's 2 timelines for like the first half, and then the last like quarter of this book, just like the pace goes like exponentially faster, which was like okay, because it made it really easy to finish this book. But I felt like it could have used a little bit more massaging as far as like pacing right at the end. Overall, I really, really loved this. This is one of my probably new favorite like fiction graphic novels, standalone graphic novels. And yeah, I expect this to be in many recommendations videos to come, because this was 100% worth my time. Okay, one more. I'm really sweating. I'm sorry if you could see my shiny egg face. The very last one that I read is A Burning by Megha Majumdar, and I told you this was my least favorite of the month. I gave this 2 stars, and it's not because I hated it. Like most books that I give 2 stars, I really just dislike. And so I thought about maybe giving this a 3 instead. I don't really do half ratings, but this would be a 2.5 if I ever did. I don't know. I just feel like this either needed to be shorter or longer, and I can't decide which. This is told in 3 different POVs, and it's a political thriller set in India, where one girl is accused of doing this like terrorist act of bombing a train, even though she claims she's innocent. But the authorities can see that she's posted certain things on Facebook. You know, they're able to, you know, pull witnesses and pull random like evidence and pieces of things out of the woodwork. So that's her POV. Another POV we follow is the person that she was teaching English to, who is pursuing becoming an actor. And the other POV we follow is one of her teachers that she used to have, who is kind of getting into becoming a politician and moving away from being a teacher. So all 3 of those kind of intersect, especially as the trial goes forward, because there's different testimonies and everyone's lives are, you know, really going in different directions. I don't know. I know this is the author's debut, and I would be interested to read more from this author, definitely. I just didn't really, I don't know. I don't know if I have the words. I just finished this morning, so maybe it hasn't settled all in my brain yet. I just don't feel like I really got under the skin of the characters very much, I guess. Like, there's lots of plot and telling that this is what's happening, telling how the characters are feeling. I think that's probably it, is I don't feel like I got to figure things out on my own or see things from my own as the reader. It was just told to me that this is the story. So I hope that that improves in future works. I'm glad that I did read it to kind of know. I know this was nominated for a few different awards, so I'm excited about that. I hope it does really well. It just was not really my cup of tea, and like, that's okay. Okay, we did it. Those were the 6 books. This feels so nice after last month where I think there was like something ridiculous, like 15 or 17 or something. So just those, even though I know I rambled for a while, but what else is new? I would love to know if you have read any of these, or you're interested in any of these, or have thoughts about these. Let me know in the comments and I will get back to you eventually, even if it takes me a few days. I promise I will read your comments and reply. If you watched this whole video and you just want to let me know that you watched and enjoyed, please leave me a lemon emoji today in honor of my new addiction, limoncello LaCroix. I will see you very soon. I've got a lot of really fun content planned in the month of June, so it's going to be a really fun time. Thank you so much for watching, my friends, and I will see you very soon. Love you, bye!